Comments by the public. In this portion of the meeting, you're welcome to come up to the microphone at the front here. Please state your name and address. Are there any public comments this evening? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. My name is Cindy Krolokowski, and I live at 8759 Melody Lane. My issue tonight involves my rights as a property owner who has lived in Macedonia for 14 years, paid taxes, and voted in every election. It may appear that my discontent involves around the fence my neighbor is erecting, but that is not my main issue. It is my belief that the City of Macedonia, in particular, the building department, did not protect my rights and adequately support me, a property owner in Macedonia. Before I proceed, please be aware that I have tried to familiar myself with the appropriate code, and I know I'm not a lawyer. On April 10th, I noticed some red markings on the sidewalk near my home and felt those markings were infringing on my property. They were from my neighbor. On the 11th, I asked the building department if a permit had been pulled. Since my neighbor is renting, they didn't seem sure about that part of the code, and they said they would have to ask the law director. They told me they'd keep me informed. On the 12th, the building department did call me to say that the homeowner, who lives in Pennsylvania, had signed off on the permit. The 14th, the neighbor began cutting trees. The 19th, he started cutting trees near my property line. On the 20th, my husband expressed concerns to the neighbor, and the neighbor presented aerial maps from the Summit County website and stated that the building department accepts those boundary lines since they are measured with the laser. My husband then pointed out a stake or monument marker at the opposite or north end of my property. On the 21st, my husband showed the neighbor the disclaimer on the website, which I have copies for all of council if I'm allowed to distribute them.
Sure, hand it to the
Clerk right there.
Or Joseph, and we'll get it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I put a star by the main sentence so you won't have to read the whole thing.
I don't want to interrupt, but did the neighbor get a survey?
I got a couple paragraphs here. The neighbor continued to cut the trees. That afternoon, I called Mr. Engel to express my discontent. I then called the police because I was worried the trees were being cut on my property. The policeman who responded to the scene was a very nice gentleman. I'm sorry I don't have the officer's name with me. He did talk to the neighbor, and the neighbor at that point said that he was done cutting the trees near my line. On the 23rd, I had a conference call with Mr. Ladd and Dennis. I'm sorry, I don't know his last name. They insisted there was nothing they could do until I had and paid for a survey. Mr. Ladd also told me this is the first time they have ever had this problem in the city. I don't care if it's the first time or the 50th time. I want my rights represented as a homeowner. I have spoken with 4 survey companies: Cuyahoga Engineer and Survey Services, McSteen Company, and I have the names of 2 other gentlemen who are surveyors that I have here. Each gentleman informed me that there is no possibility that one could or should use aerial in this situation. They also said the chances of a marker being moved are extremely slight. The neighbor had the fence posts installed. On the 23rd, I spoke with Mr. Molnar and Mr. Martin. They both told me they would speak with Mr. Ladd. Mr. Martin did call me back that night and told me he spoke with Mr. Ladd. On April 24th, Mr. Ladd left me a voicemail on my cell phone that said he visited my neighbor and asked him to wait for my survey and it did look like he could be encroaching on my property. That day, the neighbor removed the post from my property line. My surveyor has obtained the plat maps from Akron, and he will begin the survey tomorrow afternoon, weather permitting. I would like to reiterate, I am not and never have been protesting the erection of the fence, nor am I declaring that I am right about my boundary lines. But I feel I have not been adequately represented by my government officials as a homeowner. I firmly believe that the process I had to go through to get the building department to assist me was unnecessary. I have been told that the department has 30 days to grant one a permit. Since the department was more than aware of my situation, why didn't someone come out in the beginning, April 11th, I take that back, I approached them the 12th, to see what I was reporting. The entire situation could have been avoided if the department had simply come out to my home. In summary, I put before you today a formal request to consider passing legislation on two matters. Number one, aerial photos, and now I'm going to quote from that website, should never be relied upon to establish with certainty the location of property lines. If there is contention over property lines, a permit should not be granted until a survey is complete. This is the minimum. I believe the best way would be to have it mandatory that everybody gets a permit to put up a fence. Second, since my neighbor is renting, I also formally request that there be the annual inspection of all rental property in the city of Macedonia so that these properties can reflect the level of care that surrounding homes have, homes which owners like myself work so hard to maintain. Finally, I would like to thank Mr. Martin for his assistance in this situation. What I tried to accomplish in 2 weeks, he was able to take care of in 1 evening. His professionalism and compassion is greatly appreciated by both my husband and myself.
May I respond to
Yes, please.
the time that I decided to fence my yard in? I got a survey immediately, applied for a permit, and found that my neighbor's trees were on my land. I cut them down. They were lousy trees anyway. I want to apologize for your ordeal with the city, because that's not what's supposed to happen. It's not rocket science for the person who wants to put the fence up, and I think that's the rule. It was certainly the rule when I came to the city, was that I provided the survey to prove where I'm going to put the fence, and to get it approved, and I had to go to planning, I believe. It was a long time ago, 26 years ago. But this should not happen, and I apologize.
May I respond again, please?
Yes.
The surveys I've gotten range from $500 to $1,000. That's what I have to pay, because I'm the one that needs the survey according to code, because code does not, require a survey. And to the members in the audience, the aerial shots are taken from 150 feet in the air, and to think that the city distributes those photos and gives an okay for any type of a fence, building, whatever, when it clearly states they are not to be used that way, is really the hardest part I have with all of this, sir.
Did the tenant get a permit, or the owner who lives in Pennsylvania?
According to the building department, the owner somehow, he lives in Pennsylvania, signed off on the permit. I don't know how that was arranged with the department.
I find that odd.
You're not the only one.
Mrs. Krolokowski.
Yes, Krolokowski.
Krolokowski?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I apologize for
That's
mispronouncing your name. We did speak over the phone, and I told
Yes,
you I would.
and you were helpful to me, yes.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And I told you that I would discuss this with the building department. I want you to know that Mr. Ladd and I, we've had email conversation. Before the meeting, we've discussed it. We are in the process of preparing legislation which will correct this problem and put the cost of the survey on the party who's requesting for the the fence where there is a dispute. We'll be discussing that with the law department as I promised we would do. I'm sorry that I can't go back and redo what has already happened.
No, I don't have any blame for you, Mr. Engel.
But you should know that you didn't fall on deaf ears, and we are working to correct this problem.
Right, and I'm also speaking out for any, future residents,
Absolutely.
homeowners.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Did your deed not have a legal description
Yes,
where you
it
could
does,
find
but-
the pins? Did you look for the
Oh, I
pins?
found a pin,
Okay.
but the building department chose to accept the aerial photos over my pin.
And they weren't sprayed orange and real obvious to find?
No, the pins that are now put out within the last 10 to 20 years, I've learned a lot since I began investigating this, have plastic caps on the top, I believe with some type of code or something as to maybe the builder in the area who got the survey. My home is 30 years old, and those pins are just deep rusted into the ground. My neighbor insinuated that my husband or myself or the neighbor on the other side moved that pin. So that's why I had the comment in here about the
But
difficulty.
I don't understand why you have to pay for anything if he's the one that wants to put the fence up.
Well, you have to ask the building department that, not me.
Because I would go nuts. You've done very well. But so
I did
you're
my
gonna pay-
research.
You're gonna pay for a survey now to prove where your
Tomorrow,
land is.
it's coming tomorrow, the survey. Thank you for your time.
Mrs. Krolokowski,
Yes.
I apologize if this did not go right. And of course, all of this, the buck stops here. I do have to say you have presented this very intelligently and gone about it in such a way that you're looking out for future prevention of this happening. Although, going back in my memory, I don't remember this happening before, but that's 8 years.
Right.
It could have happened before.
And,
But it's good to come in and say, well, here are some thoughts on it as to how we could fix the problem. That's always a good thing. Mike, you had your hand up there.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify a couple things and the procedures that,
okay, which way do I go here?
thank you. I just want to clarify a couple things from the building department. We do follow the code. We did follow the code on this. The way that the permit was presented is acceptable. The way that the property owner signed off on the permit is acceptable. The permit was granted, and the property owner that took it out said that they would install the fence within 3 feet inside the property line. So they would go on the property line, measure 3 feet out, and it would be placed 3 foot inside so it wouldn't encroach onto their property. Now, the first chance that the building department can actually see that he's encroaching is on a post-hole inspection. So when he starts putting the posts in, and prior to putting the chain link down, we come out for an inspection. On that first inspection, Dennis and I both went out on the site, and it was clearly obvious he was encroaching onto her property. We had that immediately. He says, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. I'll take it out immediately. And I says, well, your neighbor is getting a survey. Maybe you should just hold off, because he goes, you know what? If she's getting a survey, I'll reimburse her back. I really feel bad about it. That's what he had told us.
I'd like to see that in writing.
I'm telling you, this
I
is.
wouldn't give him the permit unless she was paid.
I don't know if I could do that. I could
Let's
ask the law
try.
department, but he took the posts out, and where the placement that he was putting them in looks at least 3 foot, maybe more, inside of the property line is where he's planning on putting them. It was resolved that day on the first inspection. You know, we can't hit off something until we are out there to inspect it.
But isn't the burden of proof on the applicant? I
It
know
doesn't sound
that.
like there's a mechanism in place to make that happen. Is that what she's saying?
I-
If I'm going out and getting, if I'm putting the fence up in my yard, and my pins are visible, but if they're not visible, it sounds like I need to go out and get a survey to make those pins visible.
I
Is
gotta
that
prove
correct?
it's my yard.
That's correct.
Right, but it appears, it sounds like here that the pins were not, or they were in dispute or something like that, but
I'm in dispute with the aerial map.
Well, the
if I mow my neighbor's yard, it's gonna eventually look like my yard. And it's obviously not my, because in fact, we do that, but you know, you need to have a
I'm
survey.
not saying,
area would mean nothing.
Regardless, if they, at this point in time, when somebody comes in for a fence permit, they can draw on a sketch pad and say,
Right.
this is our property lines, and I'm putting it in 3 foot within the property lines. There's no difference between taking that and taking an aerial map off of GIS and drawing it on and saying, I'm gonna follow within. Now, the ordinance doesn't make me, I cannot say you can go survey this before I give you a permit, because there's no mechanism in order to do that. So I have to trust that this guy is gonna put it 3 foot inside the property line, and if it's not, then it becomes a civil matter.
And then when you get there and it's not there, you say, hey, these are not right. It sounds like we need to tighten this up a little bit is what it sounds like.
And generally, in 90% of the time, neighbors agree to this prior and they give us a letter, especially
Right.
we require it now. If they're gonna put it right on the property line, then they have to have their neighbors sign off on
Because
this.
when they walk around, they're going to be in your property when you maintain the fence.
When you maintain it. The whole idea of getting the 3 foot inside it is that if he's gotta replace something or paint something, he's not going on her property, so he's got enough room to do that. As far as the 30-day, I'm not quite sure what that meant or where she got that from, and as far as the laser, I'm not so sure what that means either.
I tell you, let's instead of having let's look at this and go through it. But I would also, and I don't want to speak out of turn, or sometimes I will put my foot in my mouth up here, but send me the bill when you're done. I want to see what can.
Okay, but you know, I just need to say one more thing though. In response to not coming out beforehand, when I get the survey and the gentleman cut down my trees, now I have room to bring forth a civil suit because the trees were removed from my property without my permission. So to take a step back, you know, once again, I think you need to look at legislation, and also the gal in the building department is the one that spoke about accepting the aerial maps and how they're taken from the sky with the laser. So that's where that piece came from.
Well, that's something they'll need to tighten up within their internal
I
department.
appreciate your time.
Don't we
Thank
have
you.
an ordinance about cutting down trees without some approval in our Arbor Day agreement years ago?
So if I have a tree in my yard, I got permission to cut my tree down?
You know,
There's something.
I think if your neighbor is cutting your tree down on your property, that's a civil matter, and I think the legal department can act on it. But I mean, that wouldn't be, if you called me and said your neighbor's cutting down your tree, I'd say, you know, contact the police department. I mean, there's nothing, I'm not gonna go out there and try to enforce with somebody with a chainsaw coming. It's just,
So the average tree is $500, so if you
right.
cut
I
down
mean,
4 trees out of
if
your
somebody's
yard.
damaging your property, I would suggest contacting the police.
This sounds like this could have been avoided.
Well,
It sounds like this is mass confusion.
The only other thing that I was in conflict with is that, you know, we were getting calls saying that the police had been out there several times before me, and we had actually contacted John Golden several times and said, John, can we get the police report on this so we could stick it in the file? And
I couldn't find a police report that we were there.
Thank you.
so,
Well, was there a CAD entry?
What is it?
I was talking to
he's
Chief.
talking.
Was there a CAD entry that?
I didn't have all the information. The information I had, I couldn't find that we were there.
Okay.
Mrs. Krolokowski, you made your point very, very well. I think we all learned a lot here this evening, and I'm sure there's going to be follow-up on it, but we'll be all interested in finding out what those results are, Mike. Maybe you could give us an email or what ended up happening here, if that man actually paid her or reimbursed
Oh, you mean
her.
with the survey?
Yes.
Yeah, I could definitely find out.
And as far as cutting down trees, I think there was a law because of what right now is where Lowe's and Giant Eagle are. They came in and cut down all the trees,
Wow.
and then they left it bare
That's-
forever.
that
Okay,
we-
so that's not private property.
Yeah, that's a commercial site.
Right.
That's a clearing and grubbing permit is required.
Thank you, Mrs. Krolokowski. Okay, do we have any other comments from the public? Yes, ma'am.
Shirley Koth, 902 Eileen Drive. I have a question and don't want to make it look like we're picking on the building department. But anyway, this is just something that came to my attention, and I'm here more for information than anything else. There's a piece of commercial property on Highland Road, the very last piece of property before Twinsburg, and it's been for sale for a year or so, maybe 2 years. And I had heard that recently somebody wanted to buy that. but they were looking for some sort of rebates or something to help them, you know, coming in as a new business and everything. And I have no idea what he does. I don't know what the business is or anything about that. But I heard that he came down to the city, down to the building department, talked to them about it, and they said, there's nothing we can do for you. So then he went to Aurora, who, with open arms, said, oh yeah, we'll give you a 7-year abatement, and no problem, glad to have you here. So anyway, my question really is, I just wondered, what could we have done to have saved that business for our city?
Who is this individual and what's his business?
I don't know.
Well,
You know.
Shirley, I think that before you ask a question like that.
No, Ken,
then
I'm looking
you
for
should
some.
have- You should have the name of the business and you should have the individual.
So I can't come and ask a general question?
No, you can ask a question.
asking
I'm just
a general-
saying it makes more sense
I'm
to have the
asking a
name of the
general
individual
question.
because
Can we please hang on?
anonymous questions are very, very difficult to field.
My question is, all right, forget anything I said. My question is, because I'm not here to criticize, I'm here for information. I wanted to know, you know, if a business comes in, I'm assuming it's a smaller business. All right, so, you know, I know there's something about 10 employees and, you know, different money, and I just don't know what we offer to people coming in. I don't know what all's available. And so I was just thinking, you know, where Aurora seemed to just jump on it, I was just wondering, well, was there something here that we could have done, or is there something in the future that we can do, or is there something that we offer, say a small business coming in and, you know, purchasing a piece of property and building something?
How do we know Aurora jumped on it when we don't know the name of the business or the individual?
Mr. Ladd looks like he
Yes.
wants to respond.
Yeah.
Why don't we
Yes,
hear
can I
from
please?
him?
The building department, both Kayla and Andrea are instructed when somebody comes in for a business like this to either walk them down to the finance department, because my department does not handle that. So when anybody comes in, they know that we are eager to get businesses. So they either walk them down or they get them introduced to Scott right away. I don't know, Scott, if you were introduced to this business or not.
I did receive a call from a gentleman. It sounds exactly what you were saying about. He owned a piece of property on the far portion, and he asked me if there was any tax incentives to develop that. And I said, develop it in which way? Because our CRAs or our MOP agreements are all based on income tax revenue coming in. It appeared that he wanted to have some type of incentive to build without a particular business in mind, or he was just shopping. So yeah, at that point, it sounds like this gentleman I talked to.
Okay.
But I told him it's all about economic development. I think he wanted to know if we would do a tax abatement just for a building, just so he can say, I'm going to put up this building. But he had no idea whether it was going to be retail or warehousing or anything. So.
Okay. I just didn't know what we did.
If I may interject, I go through meetings constantly, and the meetings are between my building department, my engineers, Scott, and myself, as far as businesses. And usually, when I have business, they contact me if they really are looking for something. I realize I wasn't here, and my staff does a great job of following up, but we're looking at economic development almost on a daily basis, trying to match up for computer fittings. And if we see somebody there that we can work with and it's the right kind of business, then it'll fit the lot and it'll be in the correct zoning. I can't think of ever turning away a business and then having somebody like Aurora jump on it. I would love to know the name of that business
I'll
and
see if I
talk
can
to
get
the
more
Aurora
information.
mayor and perhaps ask him what happened here. All right?
Yeah, what were they doing that they could provide something that for whatever reason we couldn't? And maybe it's just something we don't provide, or maybe, you know.
Well,
but I
we
was
do
just-
have rules, yes.
But my question really was on what do we provide and under what circumstances? And I couldn't get enough detailed information when I looked it up on the website, and I didn't know, so this just came up yesterday, so I just thought I'd ask since I was coming.
Well, I'm back now, and they're free to call me 5 days a week. I'll
Okay.
make sure I get back to anybody who wants to come here for economic development. In fact, right now, I'm very proud of how many not empty buildings we have anymore. how many lots we have being built, how many people. I mean, it's amazing if you look through Macedonia and you don't even see any empty stores anymore. The last one is Popeyes going in the mall. So, you know, we're all over that.
Yeah, well, okay, because my question was just, you know, what do we do? I was just trying to get a feel for that.
Yeah,
But
Mr.
I
Mayor,
wasn't sure.
let me add too, Mr. Mayor, that some time ago, you attended this, we made a presentation on specialty lubricants to the businesses in the area. And at that time, extensive literature was developed, and it was provided to any company, brokers, individuals of that ilk who were thinking about relocating to Macedonia or who had clients who were thinking about relocating. And essentially, all of that information contained the incentives and the requirements for any business looking to locate here. And for that reason, that individual, whomever he may be, and again, a lot of times these anonymous sources are, when you take a look at them, you find out that either they didn't exist or it wasn't quite the particular situation that's being described. But that information is available from the city. It's always been available from the city. I mean, look at the success the city had in terms of putting Graco together. Look at the success the city had just in terms of filling Two Club Golf, which many residents had wanted. Look at the success we've had with filling those retail locations, which over the past year or two had become vacant and now are full. Even Winking Lizard is now saying to us, we need to expand. They brought a very good proposal to council to expand their outdoor dining because more people want to come to Macedonia and more people want to do business here. They want to dine here. They want to entertain themselves here. So I really think that business development, Mr. Mayor, you've been a part of this, it's going very, very well. And being a member on Planning Commission, I could tell you, we don't have nights when we're not busy. We do not have nights when we're not busy. And I think this Monday's meeting was another example of that, Mr. Mayor.
Yes. Shirley, just for your information, retail sales don't get any incentives. Okay, like if they were going to use it for retail sales, we don't offer anything to anybody in retail sales. It's with manufacturing is where the difference is. So I don't know what they were going to put on that lot, but if it was retail sales, there wouldn't be an incentive.
Okay, well, you know, since I just came to my attention yesterday, I didn't really have any time to, you know, look any more into it, but I just wanted, you know, I guess I was a little like, I hate to see another city get anything that could have been here, but, you know, who knows? So I was just looking for information.
I think we were in the paper one time with Hudson in regards to stealing our companies, and I think that makes it very clear my thoughts. I agree with you. There's no way any company should be taken out of here, especially swiped out from under our nose. In Summit County right now, there actually is an agreement where if they were taken away from us and given more, then there are penalties by the county, and we'll be entitled to 1/2 of those taxes.
Well, this person didn't own the property.
Okay.
They were looking to purchase the property.
Okay.
That part I do know for sure.
All right.
But,
thank you.
So anyway. Okay, thank you.
All right.
You know, Mr. Mayor, too, you need to mention the fact that what's happening in Northfield is going to have a very strong collaborative and spillover effect to this city. And we're going to be very, very busy, I believe, these next few years.
All right, moving on. Are there any other public comments? All right, hearing none, let's get right